Hello and welcome to Flow Easy. It's the first time that I'm making a video here, and I wanted to focus on emotional intelligence and empathy. And the reason for this is because I do believe that in the age of information, there's enough information out there for you to gather and for you to find for whatever niche, for whatever area, for whatever problems, situation you may be in. You can find that on YouTube because I know that's where I find a lot of my own information as well. However, when it comes to our personal lives, often we deal with so many things and we end up just maneuvering our lives to the eyes of how we learn to deal with the situations, perhaps how we grew up, how we learn from our parents, from our siblings, from our environment, the people around us. But when we start to harness the power of emotional intelligence, you actually can get to an area where you realize it all starts with us. That means whatever problems you think you have, it really can get shifted, can shift totally when you realize you have the power to change that. Because emotional intelligence is something that when you have self awareness, like everything else, it starts with self awareness. You realize that you are empowered to change your situation. You are empowered to realize that you don't need someone to change their behavior, their ways of being to protect your feeling. You can realize that sometimes the fear, the doubts that we have are actually an invitation to go in and be curious and make the changes that you need to make because you are worth it, and also because that's where the magic happens. When we are afraid to confront our fears, our worries, our doubts, we are in a place where we feel we are protected, but that's also the area where we stop growing. And then it gets to a point where you start to figure something is missing and you start to not really enjoy life as much because you are in this protective layer of trying to not allow your feelings to get through when you are in conversation with your friends, or maybe you are in a relationship that you feel you're not safe enough to speak. And then before you know, you are dimming your light, and then you find yourself lost. Lost because you lose that connection to yourself. And when you get to that place that you lose that connection with yourself, you also start to realize that there's something missing. There's no fulfillment. And also, happiness doesn't come from being protected and being safe and not going through situations because everyone has to behave a certain way for us to feel okay. But when we harness emotional intelligence and we start to realize that I have to work on myself to reach self mastery, or at least to reach a level of awareness that shows me how to navigate those challenges that are coming in, how to navigate any challenges that may be now arriving with by triggers, by ways of triggers. So maybe you're being triggered when you're speaking to your partner, you get triggered. When you're speaking to your mom, you get triggered. You're speaking to your siblings, you get triggered. Once that emotional intelligence is awakened, it's open, and you recognize that you can utilize to shift your relationships because triggers become a gift. Triggers become a gift because you recognize that that is actually showing an area that you need to work on. You recognize that those triggers are telling you of something that you embodied because of how you were growing up, maybe how someone spoke to you when you were a kid, and now every time that situation occurs, you feel triggered. And then you expect people to be cool during that area, or maybe not to talk about certain subjects to protect your feelings. But when you recognize that triggers are a gift, you are open. You are open where you almost feel blessed to have those things come up because that is an opportunity to learn, an opportunity to go deeper, to really understand who you are, what you are about, why you do the things that you do, and how to enhance that ability to feel your feelings without falling apart, to feel your feelings by ways of growing and not blaming someone, but taking the responsibility to know that this trigger, it's something that was living in me. Maybe through an event, a trauma event, a situation, something that was really scary. I internalized this and it's living in my body because, like the book says, the body keeps score. Sometimes our mind is not aware how much we kept the score internally until a trigger occurs. That's the reason why the trigger is a gift, because it keeps revealing you all these things, the limitations that you embodied. And now it's time to pay attention to realize that you too can now recognize it and you can fight it, because you don't have to keep your limitations. That means what people say about you doesn't need to be true unless you allow it to be true, or unless you recognize and you feel, yeah, that is true. But when you take the responsibility to decide, I can be better. I might not have control over everyone and any situation, but I can control me. And that's the thing. The beauty falls when you know you can control your own emotion, or the relationship that you have with the words that other people may say, or the behavior of others in front of you. When you recognize that you can choose how to feel and that you can choose how to change it, you are now empowered to start to change your personality in a way, including your blueprint, so that you are now creating the reality that you want, because your responses, your reactions will be very different. Because when you don't allow the triggers to be a worry situation and you welcome them because you want to understand, you also start to walk in a way where you are open to whatever happens. And that's powerful. You start to recognize that you can actually enjoy life in a different way, probably in a deeper way. You start to notice that there's more meaning to life in general. And that's the reason why awareness is the first step, to recognize the things that happen to you that changes how you feel around and maybe makes you reactive. Because when you start to welcome those things, you are less reactive, you are more self-directed, you are more empowered to really recognize that someone might be falling apart in front of you, but you don't have to. You can stay in your power and guide this person by being a giver. And I might end up using this word a lot, because I really believe that when you start to recognize who you are and you start to love those things about you, because you are working through it, you are working through the challenges that you have on the inside, you also start to treat other people better. When we work on ourselves and we recognize the amount of love that we can get on our own, that you start to notice who you really are. You also start to extend more grace onto others. You start to become kinder, and you start to be more empathetic. You start to recognize that maybe the people that trigger you, and I'll say, for example, maybe your mother triggers you, and the way that she speaks or the way that she reacts to certain situation triggers you. You start to see that as a blessing, because your mom also doesn't have the self-awareness that she needs to have. And now you are in a position to empower her to fix that, to recognize that that is not serving her, that maybe those are the things that are on the way of her becoming a better being, the person who walks into her own power. You start to recognize how to support the people around you, because you are now walking into your own truth. And because of that, you are now the individual that can teach others. And what's interesting is when we start to learn all these steps on how to harness that self mastery, you also feel called to teach others. And when you get there, it feels good, because it's like when you teach someone else how to identify those things and how to live in a more empowered life, you start to do the same thing. That means you teach someone else and then you learn it twice. This is a quote from Jim Quick. When you teach someone else, you learn it twice. So the process is evolving, and you start to realize that you are becoming the best version of you every single day, because you are also changing the narrative of you. You're changing how your life has been going, and you are more empowered to be a leader in your environment, a person of influence, but a positive influence. And isn't that a great place to be? So I want you to embody this ability to open up, to shift and change your identity to someone who is open to whatever comes, to the things that creates doubts, etc., but to recognize that as a gift so that you have a chance to really work through what's on the inside that you need to change, so that when you get squeezed, it comes love, it comes empathy, it comes support, it comes given. That you're not someone that gets squeezed and gets negativity, that you embody that positivity and you become someone, a go-to person, but also a person that can start to change your environment, because those changes are not just for us. Once you start changing, it changes everyone around us. That means it changes your children, it changes your spouse, it changes your friends, your family. Everyone start to walk into that energy because you start to emanate a different vibration, a different energy, one more empowering. So, and hence that. And thank you for listening to me today. And I'm just excited to do more videos moving forward. Mwah. Subscribe.